refuge in the Dharma.
I have completely taken refuge in the Sangha.
I have completely taken refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Buddha, the Incomparable One.
I take refuge in the Buddha, the Incomparable One.
I take refuge in the Dharma, honorable for its purity.
I take refuge in the Dharma, honorable for its purity.
I take refuge in the Sangha, honorable for its harmonious life.
I take refuge in the Sangha, honorable for its harmonious life.
I have completely taken refuge in the Buddha.
I have completely taken refuge in the Buddha.
I have completely taken refuge in the Dharma.
I have completely taken refuge in the Dharma.
I have completely taken refuge in the Sangha.
I have completely taken refuge in the Sangha.
Buddha itself is the truth and true realization.
Buddha itself is the truth and true realization.
This present self takes refuge in the Buddha.
This present self takes refuge in the Buddha.
From now and into the endless future, I will make Buddha my teacher.
From now into the endless future, I will make Buddha my teacher.
I will refrain from following deluded teachings.
I will refrain from following deluded teachings.
How wonderful the teaching of compassion!
How wonderful the teaching of compassion.
How wonderful the teaching of compassion!
How wonderful the teaching of compassion.
How wonderful the great teaching of compassion!
How wonderful the great teaching of compassion.
You can put your hands down. The sila are difficult to fathom. In being let out of everyday confusion through the long process of maturation, you will experience the true heart of the sila. The true heart of the sila is the realization that all things in this vast universe are nothing other than your true self. Without this experience, the sila are impossible to follow. The way to manifest the sila is to manifest the wisdom that knows pratitya samutpada, interdependent origination. Pratitya samutpada is the activity of the Dharma. The Dharma gives birth to a child, and that child is the sila. When we are freely able to follow the Dharma, we will freely follow the sila. Until we learn to freely follow the Dharma, these sila will act as a light upon a dark sea. With all of our will, we must endeavor to follow them. These sila have been passed from generation to generation until now. In the 82nd generation, I give them to you. So if we can all bring our hands together in Gasho. As I read these sila, there are maybe those among you who have taken the precepts or the sila before, and you're free to respond to those that you have taken. The Jukai ceremony, this kind of ceremony, provides an opportunity for those who have taken the precepts to reaffirm them, to reaffirm their practice. So please feel free to say yes. And for those of you who aren't or haven't, you just listen, just enjoy. The first sila is, affirm life, do not kill. In the Dharmakaya, there is no killing or not killing, no one to kill and nothing to be killed. Fully realizing this in the human world gives rise to the mind of compassion. You must embody the mind of compassion. This sila is very difficult to follow. Do you vow to follow it with all of your will?
Yes.
The second sila is, be giving, do not steal. In the Dharmakaya, there is no stealing or not stealing, no one to take and nothing to be taken. Fully realizing this in the human world gives rise to the mind of spotless integrity. You must embody the mind of spotless integrity. This sila is very difficult to follow. Do you vow to follow it with all of your will?
Yes.
The third sila is, honor the body, do not misuse sexuality. In the Dharmakaya, there is no keeping faithful or not keeping faithful, no one to crave and nothing to be desired. Fully realizing this in the human world gives rise to the mind of virtue. You must embody the mind of virtue. This sila is very difficult to follow. Do you vow to follow it with all of your will?
Yes.
The fourth sila is, manifest truth, do not lie. In the Dharmakaya, there is no lying or not lying, no one to be deceptive and no one to deceive. Fully realizing this in the human world gives rise to the mind of perfect trust. You must embody the mind of perfect trust. This sila is very difficult to follow. Do you vow to follow it with all of your will?
Yes.
Good. The fifth sila is, proceed clearly, do not cloud the mind. In the Dharmakaya, there is no intoxication nor sobriety, no one to fool, and nothing to be deluded about. Fully realizing this in the human world gives rise to the mind of perfect clarity. You must embody the mind of perfect clarity. This sila is very difficult to follow. Do you vow to follow it with all of your will?
Yes.
Good. Okay. Now Doshu. As a monk, you must also commit to follow 5 further sila, which both deepen and broaden the scope of the first 5. Okay?
Yes.
The sixth sila is, see the perfection. Do not speak of others' errors and faults. In the Dharmakaya, there is no correct or incorrect, no one to err, and nothing to be criticized. Fully realizing this in the human world gives rise to the mind of unconditional acceptance. You must embody the mind of unconditional acceptance. This sila is very difficult to follow. Do you vow to follow it with all of your will?
Yes.
The seventh sila is, realize self and other as one. Do not elevate the self and belittle others. In the Dharmakaya, there is no superior or inferior, no one to ascend and nothing to overcome. Fully realizing this in the human world gives rise to the mind of equality. You must embody the mind of equality. This sila is very difficult to follow. Do you vow to follow it with all of your will?
Yes.
The eighth sila is to give freely. Do not be withholding. In the Dharmakaya, there is no gaining or losing, no one to be deprived, and nothing to amass. Fully realizing this in the human world gives rise to the mind of generosity. You must embody the mind of generosity. This sila is very difficult to follow. Do you vow to follow it with all of your will?
Yes.
The ninth sila is manifest non-duality. Do not be angry. In the Dharmakaya, there is no self or other, no one to offend, and nothing to take offense at. Fully realizing this in the human world gives rise to the mind of harmony. You must embody the mind of harmony. This sila is very difficult to follow. Do you vow to follow it with all of your will?
Yes.
The 10th sila is experience the intimacy of things. Do not defile the 3 treasures. In the Dharmakaya, there is no 2 or 3, no isolation, and no distinction to be made. Fully realizing this in the human world gives rise to the mind of unity. You must embody the mind of unity. This sila is very difficult to follow. Do you vow to follow it with all of your will?
Yes.
Good. You have all manifested the sila. Good. You have become Buddha's disciples, but beyond that, as disciples of Mahayana, you must study the 3 fundamental sila. A person who can keep these 3 is a true Mahayana disciple. I, on behalf of Buddha, give them to you. The first is to abstain from creating discord. Manifest absolute self as the Dharma activity without attachment to your personal self. The second is to actualize harmony. Manifest no self as the Dharma activity without attachment to absolute self. The third is to clarify the mind and to be of benefit to all beings. Manifest the interplay of absolute self and no self as the activity of the Dharma together with all sentient beings. Do you vow to keep these 3 sila?
Yes.
As disciples of the Buddha, you will each have a Buddhist name, which is a symbol that you have been born into the realm of the Bodhisattva. You must each accept responsibility for your new names and new identities, which are in fact your true identity. Okay. So, Monika, I'll start with you. Your name is Myoko. Myoko. Myo means clear or direct. And ko means action or conduct. So your name means clear or direct action. Joan, you will be called Myo Shin. Myo sounds the same, but it's actually a different character. So this Myo does not mean clear and direct. It means elegant, graceful. And Shin means heart or mind, the heart-mind. So graceful heart. Well, Seishin, you don't get a new name today, but you are called Eldership-Seishin, and that's a pretty heavy responsibility. But I've known you for a long time now, and I know that you'll do it well. Thank you. Now, we have this interesting situation where when a person becomes an ordained monk, I have the, you can sit down, yeah. I have the opportunity to give a person a new name. And so there's been all kinds of personal requests made to me by different people. Oh, please, don't change his name. We're just getting used to Doshu. And I think that those of you who know me are pretty familiar that I don't really do requests. So, however, over the past several years, I have learned to compromise, which I think has been a valuable lesson for me. And so your name is quite different now, but not different at all. Your name before was Doshu, and it meant, Do meant way or path, and Shu meant to find a place, to find a way, or to find a home in the way. And I think that those of you who have practiced with you over the last several years can attest to the fact that you've done that. Without question, you have found your home and your place in the way. So, I haven't changed your name at all in some ways. You'll be called Doshu. But the second character we can get rid of, Shu, of finding your place. And you need bigger shoes now that you're a monk. So the Shu that you get now is to master, to acquire, to attain. So, mastering the way is your new name. Generally, at this point in the ceremony, it's my opportunity to give a little bit of a talk. So if you have young children that are going to jump out of your arms and run screaming out of the building if I go on for too long, please feel free to just step outside. Or if you don't, or if you got to go to the bathroom really badly or anything, now's the time to do it, because once I start going, I don't know when I'm going to stop. Forever hold your peas, I guess. I've been throwing around a lot of words in this ceremony that for those of you who are not familiar with Buddhism or Zen, it may be difficult to sort of follow along. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what these things mean. When we talk about in the Sila, in the Dharmakaya, and in the teaching of Buddhism, the teaching of Zen, my teacher, when asked what Zen was, he would reply that Zen is 3 becoming 1 and 1 becoming 3. When we look at this world, we tend to look at it in terms of a subjective perspective. We sit within our own sort of home, our own personality, our own place, and we look out at the world as something which exists outside of us. And we add this third characteristic, this third realm, which we don't often acknowledge, which is space or distance itself. So when we're looking at something, we stand in our own minds as a fixed object, and we look out across a distance at something else which we take to be a fixed object. And for many of us, this is the way that we go through our whole lives. We go through our whole lives feeling somehow that this fixed object needs something to be more full, to be more complete, to be better. And we go about chasing these things in the world. But this is just one side of the equation. This is just one side of the world, this world of 3. And as we investigate further, and I don't just mean through meditation, I don't just mean through the practice of Buddhism, but if we actually investigate this world around us, we find that this idea, this perspective of things as being this 3 distinct, independent, isolated things, subject, distance, and object, we find that this isn't necessarily so. We like to think that we can walk through the world and not affect and not be affected by the things that we are in relationship with. And as we investigate this more and more deeply, we find that we are always in relationship with everything in this vast universe. So this activity of 3 becomes 1 is in practice what it happens when we